Indieloop's first ever review was on Digseum, and hey, look, it's another Digseum video. Wait, this isn't Digseum. What the hell is it? Click and Conquer is a new release from Sockhouse Studios, and despite what the name might have you believe, it's not the mobile version of a popular RTS franchise. I have to admit it popped up on my radar a little over a month and a half ago, and I've had an eye on it ever since. I was quietly hoping that the creator of my new obsession might see some sense and decide against releasing it, based on the feedback they've received in every corner of the internet I've tracked it to. Be it itch, Steam, Reddit, or here on YouTube, everywhere I've looked I've found there to be some pretty valid criticism. Some of that's been scrubbed from the internet. The game's itch.io page was re-uploaded without the comments, but courtesy of the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, it's not too difficult to find what the original complaints were. A dev attempting to purge criticism from the internet does rather set off a few alarm bells, or a red alert, if you will. Get it? Because the... Before we move on with the critique, I wanted to highlight a decision we made here at Indieloop relatively early into starting it as a project. That if we were going to publish negative reviews, they needed to be earned. There's a couple of our earlier reviews that go against that, namely for Talented and Nights in Tight Spaces. Only one of those was made into a video, and I don't want to unnecessarily drag their names back into the mud because, full disclosure, I do stand by neither game being good, but in both instances there was clear intent from the developer to create something worthwhile. It feels kinda mean to use our platform to denigrate that sort of game when there's plenty of good games we could be drawing attention to. Or, if we must focus on the negative, games whose problems are significantly more egregious than having boring mechanics or being underwhelming. As such, there's a handful of games I've played over the past few months whose reviews will never see the light of day. That could be for a multitude of reasons, but in each instance it wasn't because the developer hadn't put the effort in. They had clearly tried to make a good game, they just, in my opinion, hadn't necessarily succeeded. There are other negative reviews we published that I stand by, where I'm more skeptical about the developer's intent. I'm happy to leave you to discover those for yourself. If you'd rather have your cynicism served fresh, though, you needn't look any further than this video. I'm not quite sure what I was expecting when even the studio's name and logo feels somewhat like a ripoff of another studio.
Shock Bob.
But I'm going to try my best to be as fair as I can with Sockhouse Studios. One final thing to address, while I do have quite a bit to say about Click and Conquer, it's not as if it's made by a particularly prominent developer. I'm hardly punching down because you lot aren't subscribing fast enough for that, but still, bear that in mind. I do think it's all pretty shady, and I'm sure they realise that, but there are bigger players out there who do things that are probably just as bad. Perhaps they just know how to be a little bit more subtle about it. So, continuing on from last week's theme of reviews that aren't really reviews, my criticism can be boiled down into 3 distinct parts. Maybe you agree with it all, maybe you think some of it's fair and some of it isn't, maybe you think I'm totally in the wrong and that Click and Conquer should be making my top 10 list at the end of the year. But we'll start with... This is the least important point, so we'll try and get through it quickly. It's not very good. Yeah, I know I just made a big song and dance about how that wasn't enough these days for me to publish a negative review, but there are caveats here. The 2 massive ones coming up later in this video, but then also the question of the developer's intent. It's harder to believe that a developer is legitimately putting the effort in when there's no original idea involved, everything is made from assets, and they've got a self-proclaimed plan to build a commercial game in a very short time frame. In this instance, 300 hours. That last one is obviously made significantly easier by the first 2. When someone else has done all the work thinking up your game's mechanics and gameplay loop, your work is effectively trying to remake the thing that already exists, and using assets certainly speeds that up even further. For what it's worth, I do think using assets can be legitimate, look at Vampire Survivors for example, but not really when the game idea itself is just a clone. So the core gameplay loop in Click and Conquer is dropping bombs on people to get money, and then spending that money to upgrade your bombing capabilities. More on that frankly insane thematic choice a little later in the video, but let's just for a second pretend it's totally normal. When you click in, I don't know, Digseum, you get this meaty feedback each time. In this one, you're dropping literal bombs and it feels less impactful than digging a hole in the ground. Primarily, I think that's down to the mediocre animations and sound design. They've tried to copy things like the little screen shake that Digseum gives you, but it just doesn't tie together nicely when the explosion sound is so weak, when the bomb drop animation is just an asset getting smaller with a little trail, when the fog of war dissipates like it's been blown at by a gentle breeze. The one obvious mechanical change they have made, making regular non-prestige upgrades into a skill tree rather than a handful of clickable bonuses, eradicates the variation between regular gameplay and prestiging. With both being skill trees, when you prestige it doesn't feel special or unique, and so the gameplay loop isn't broken up in a distinct or satisfying way. Effectively, as we'll get onto very soon, any changes that have been made from Digseum just serve to make the game worse. It ends up feeling less like a release-worthy game and more like an exercise in game development, where you're trying to make something that already exists in order to practice and learn how to do it, not in order to sell it to anyone. Or, as Sockhouse themselves put it, build a commercial game. Okay, the second reason, which to be honest has already been covered fairly extensively and which is why this video exists. If Digseum wasn't a thing or I wasn't familiar with it, I might have had Click and Conquer pop up wherever it was that I first saw it, not thought much of it, and forgotten about it before the day was over. As it was, I took one look at it and thought, this is a Digseum clone, and I paid attention. Some efforts have been made since I first saw it to make it slightly less Digseum-like. Originally, Click and Conquer also had a green bar at the top that went down with each of your clicks, exactly like Digseum. This was removed, one can only assume, to make it look less like Digseum, and simultaneously made it look worse and removed some of the visual information for the player. In both games, you've got the rather specific mechanic of a blue bar that fills up as you level up your locations. Doing so gives your incremental income a boost. In Digseum, it's an extra 30% per visitor per second. In Click and Conquer, it's just an extra 15% per second. No visitors to worry about here, as you've probably already dropped a bomb on them. Initially, the UI showed you the previous percentage, i.e. that you'd gone from, for example, 15 to 30%, with a nice little arrow made from a hyphen and a greater than symbol between the two. Funnily enough, also exactly like in Digseum. Now it just shows you the new percentage. Again, objectively worse game design that gives the player less information and is implemented, presumably, just to make the game look ever so slightly less like the one it's copied. It's these sorts of changes that I find, in a way, the most irritating. Anyone familiar with both games knows you've ripped off Digseum, you know you've ripped off Digseum, so why not just own it at that point? Will the half-assed tweaks to de-Digsify it make it less obvious when you've got so much in common with the original game? Is it because the developer read the comment about getting DMCA'd and thought that those changes would be enough to avoid that? I'm not going to pretend to be any sort of legal expert. My guess would be that it falls into the not illegal but pretty unscrupulous category, like your dad dating an 18-year-old and you're welcome for that image. There mightn't be anything legally wrong with it, but come on, you know what you're doing. I mean, look, perhaps I'm being a little too harsh. The black bar that comes across the screen at the start of each level has 90% transparency, whereas it's got 60% in Digseum. The wavy level up text is in a different place and is rainbow coloured instead of the boring ass Digseum blue. The name of each zone is above its picture rather than below it. I mean, it does still have a level, and that level is still shown at the bottom in blue, and the XP required to reach the next level is still shown on hover, and once you've clicked on the level, you need to click on another button to confirm, and then you do get a full splash screen with an icon above a word, but that's green and not orange, and the text is kind of blurry and not animated, so I mean, pretty different. And then okay, the aforementioned black bar does come up in both games, but it says ready go and not start. And then you can start clicking on the board, which has its one-tile border all the way around it to uncover what's hidden below. They're completely different. They're completely different. Initially, I had a joke somewhere in there about how the prestige screen doesn't have those floaty circle things in the background as another example of an inconsequential difference. But it turns out that even that entirely pointless feature has inexplicably been replicated. Why? Why? Okay. Look, there are larger developers who are probably as deserving of the ire from this section. If you're as lucky as I am, you might very well have received an advert for Kingshot on this very video. Okay, sick, that's the crossbow tower sorted. Now I just need 5,000 more gold and I can buy back my dignity. I'm quite sure they're making more money in a day from ripping off Thronefall than Click and Conquer is ever going to make. But even that is less of an obvious rehash. Again, the cynic in me says it's because a larger studio would know to cover its tracks better, because just changing the theme doesn't crack it. And oh god, the theme. The choice of theme betrays what is such a fundamental misunderstanding of why the game that's being stolen from was successful in the first place. Yes, it was cleaner, the animations more receptive, the art and UI more appealing, but it's also cozy. The theme and genre work together, and that's just not the case in Click and Conquer. Take, for example, the little skeletons that remain on the board once you kill a target. It all contributes to what is such an unsettling vibe when juxtaposed with the soundtrack and ostensibly relaxing gameplay. Not that it would be much of an improvement, but I think if they dissolved into pixels or disappeared in a puff of smoke, that would at least be better than having that morbid reminder stuck on your screen for the rest of the level. Really, I'd struggle to see a way to ever make the concept redeemable, but it's like the developer has gone out of their way to make it as disturbing as possible. Who knows, perhaps it's just rage bait and I've fallen for it hook, line and sinker. Yes, there is a satisfaction found in Digseum's gameplay loop, which is kind of replicated in Click and Conquer, although I have already laid out my argument for why it's executed poorly here. But Digseum offers a cutesy, cozy experience, and as I just mentioned, Click and Conquer obviously doesn't, right? Right? Not according to Sockhouse. In Click and Conquer's description on its Steam page, the phrase "drop bombs through the fog of war" comes literally 3 words after the word relaxing. This genre mismatch is, apparently from their own comments, not the developer trying to be subversive. I really don't think there's much benefit of the doubt to be given here. They're not trying to make some clever point about, for example, people being desensitized to the awful goings-on in the world. In fact, when someone raised that exact point on the now scrubbed itch.io page, Sockhouse posted the comment across to Reddit in an attempt to ridicule them. To quote the posts they made, "Apparently, my cute little pixel game is desensitizing players to real violence." Cute. They literally used the word cute to describe it. They genuinely saw Digseum and thought that the reskin it needed was dropping bombs into you literally have no idea where, and that in spite of that thematic change, it would maintain its chill, relaxing vibe. That a game about dropping bombs on people is cute because it's got pixel art and a mellow soundtrack. The next time a country commits some war crimes, it should just stick some lo-fi beats over the footage, and presumably, in the world the developer lives in, we'll all just agree that it was a cute ickle whoopsie. It's insane. In a way, I'm a little hesitant to click publish on this video, not because I think anything I've said is unfair, but because I know you're watching Sockhouse and you genuinely seem unhinged. Let's try and bring it back a bit. Look, I'm not saying games about war shouldn't exist, and I don't fully agree with the idea that it has the power to desensitize anyone. My issue really is that it's just a deeply unpleasant theme for a game that's purportedly relaxing. I don't think I want to meet the person who agrees that it is. And I do think it's more problematic than, say, Call of Duty, because here you're indiscriminately throwing explosives into the fog and hoping it hits the right thing. I think even the most militaristic of people would say that's not how bombing is supposed to work, and it has some really off-putting connotations if you think about it for longer than a few seconds. And that's the game. It's not taking war seriously, there's no story, no political commentary or moral questioning. You're just meant to vibe with it for your playthrough, and presumably leave Click and Conquer feeling like you had a similarly cozy and enjoyable experience to what Digseum would have offered. I'm pretty sure I saw them say somewhere that they wanted to make a game for people who liked Digseum and wanted more of that. This ain't it, bro. Perhaps there's more people out there than I expect who think that's what this is. I suppose time will tell once the reviews start coming in. I'm choosing not to rate this one for the exact opposite reason I chose not to rate Many Nights a Whisper. If you've got 37 minutes spare and you want to cancel things out with some more positive vibes, you should definitely check that one out. Link on the screen. Otherwise, thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you next week. Sure, there's some comment I could make here about like the capitalist agenda and how people are just so hungry. I just want to have an excuse to put this clip in, that clip in at the end, you know, the Tim Curry space at the end. So, capitalism bad. Oh, I forgot the anecdote about. Never mind. Anecdote on the Patreon. Ah, got ya. I'll put the anecdote on the Patreon. Locked. It's locked. If you want the anecdote, €4 a month. I'll sort that Patreon out. It'll happen. This isn't going in the video, is it? Is this really going post-credits? Space! Look, wait, because Tim Curry. Everyone likes Tim Curry.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!